Hi, everyone. My name is Eunhee, and it's a little bit burdened to wrap up this conference as a last person, but I will do my best. And first of all, thank you so much for participating in this conference for a while. And thank you so much for organizing this conference to spread North Korean human rights issues to the world. Okay, let's dive into my main topic. What does freedom mean to you? So I want to ask this question to all of you. What does freedom mean to you? It's easy to ask the question, but extremely hard to answer if you think about it deeply. In preparing for this forum, I invested a lot of time into trying to figure out how to explain the meaning of the freedom I wanted when I was in North Korea and the meaning of freedom as a free, democratic citizen. What about you? How much time do you need to answer this question? In maybe 5 seconds for some people, forever for others. Whatever is the case, I can guess that most people will have different definitions. While many people are born in freedom, it must be taken by North Korean refugees. Having to risk my life to get to freedom makes me think deeply about the value of freedom and about the values I live by in that freedom. To explain how I grabbed my freedom, I will share two things with you that made me feel grateful. The first thing is that my defection made me who I am today. Second, I'm the daughter of my grandparents. They helped me prepare me to be ready to grab my freedom. When I was 5 years old, my parents got divorced. My mother died after being in a mental hospital for 10 years, and my father moved on with a new family. I was moved back and forth between an orphanage and the homes of my dad and grandparents. At the time, divorce was not common in North Korea, and such a family background made it difficult for the child. Children without parents were considered to be spoiled and rude, making it difficult for me to have a regular school life and childhood. I remember fighting with a classmate when I was in elementary school. I don't remember why I fought with her, but I vividly remember what her mother said about me in front of many friends after class. She said, "Do not talk or play with Eunhee because she is growing up without parents, so she is a naughty and rude girl." I burst into tears. I went home and told my grandparents about how painful it was to be judged based on being from a broken home. As usual, my grandparents didn't complain or give a direct answer. Instead, they used the Socratic method to help me to learn to think by myself. Why would she say such a thing? What can you do to solve this problem? They always taught me to be a problem solver and think deeply about challenges and situations. That's why when I illegally watched the South Korean medias and dramas for the first time, I was ready to analyze the problem I was facing. My grandparents had prepared me for the moment. One day I asked my grandmother, "Why can I freely control my body? I want to live freely like people in the South Korean dramas. They can express themselves without being punished." I told her that I want to go to China to be free. My grandparents replied immediately, saying there was no hope in North Korea. I could go to China and live as a free person. In their case, they said they were older, I was young, so I should enjoy and taste freedom. Thanks to their support, I was able to realize my dream coming to South Korea after escaping China, Laos, and Thailand. According to Hana Foundation statistics, about 34,000 North Koreans have escaped to South Korea since North Korea suffered a famine in the mid-1990s. Many defectors use brokers to stay in touch with their families and send money in a complex, expensive, and risky process. In 2015, 3 years after I escaped, I found a broker who could help me to contact my grandmother. It required a smuggled mobile phone to call the south from mountains near the border with China. That could result in better reception while avoiding being detected by officials. Brokers in North Korea and China have long taken commissions of 30%, and that happened to me with the $2,000 I paid to send money to North Korea and to talk with my grandmother. It was at 4 a.m. before I went to work. I do not remember what we talked about. I do remember how much I cried over the phone for 3 hours and struggled with the nightmares for almost 6 months after I talked with her. How can I describe the pain of hearing her voice and not being able to hold her in my arms again? I'm not the only one to feel such pain, to have such nightmares. It's the pain felt by many North Korean refugees living in China, South Korea, the United States, and Europe about their family members still in North Korea. For people born in democratic countries with the freedom of movement, freedom of choice, and freedom of press, it's probably unthinkable to be unable to call and see family members when they want to meet. However, for us, North Korean refugees, calling family members even once a year is not practical. And seeing them is even more unimaginable. That's why I say I took my freedom. Considering what freedom means to me makes me think deeply, reminds me why I am sensitive to attacks on my personal freedom, even as I live in a democracy, and makes me wish I could share this freedom with the North Koreans. Second, freedom allows me to define my own values. What I mean by that, freedom is rich and spicy, and its God demands what we all still must work for both on the personal and public front. When I was visiting the USA in 2019, I took a bus to see the Grand Canyon. I saw very impressive statement written on a wall. Freedom is not free. I immediately nodded my head like that. America is known as the land of freedom, and people in the USA emphasize how much their ancestors fought to get freedom. Even if you were born in freedom, someone else had to fight to get it. Individuals today must continue to protect their rights. Freedom isn't even free for those born into it. A few years ago, I realized that freedom is an option to develop my personal life. In 2016, I was a regular panelist on My Way to Meet You, a South Korean TV show featuring North Korean defectors telling their stories. I was happy for two main reasons. One, I was just starting college, so I could be stable financially. Two, I could spread diverse anecdotes of North Korea by contributing my story. Many people could hear another perspective about North Korea, and people could have deeper insight and maybe even more come up with new approaches to deal with the North Korean regime. However, over time, I discovered the pattern of this TV show. Depending on whether the Conservative Party or Progress Party was in power, the contents of the show could change. Panelists on the show were not really free to give their real opinions. In this circumstance, if someone's purpose is only making money, he maybe manipulate his experiences by making them more dramatic and emotional. I was disappointed when I had to admit to myself that I was only on the show for money. Even if I had special information about North Korea, I couldn't express it freely. Exploitation is a strong word to use, but at the time, I was starting to feel that way, knowing that I had to appease the writers and producers. I was in a democratic country, but was I really free? At the time, I was in a dilemma. Do I ignore injustice so I can make money to pay for my studies, or become an independent person taking charge of my life? I eventually chose to be an independent person so I could protect my personal freedom financially and politically. I started my own YouTube channel so I could talk freely and spread North Korean human rights issues more accurately to the world. It was an easy decision to leave the TV show. In just one day of recordings, I could make enough money to cover my rent for 2 months. That was a good experience, challenging me internally about how I can live in a capitalist society as a free person. It was a learning experience that money could not buy. I learned essential things, most notably. If we don't identify our own values, then we can be used by authorities and politicians for their objectives. By protecting your freedom, developing your own values, you can avoid being a victim politically or financially. If we value and fight for individual and personal freedom, we can make a prosperous democracy. So, what does freedom mean to you? It is easy to ask, but not so easy to answer. As a person who lived under the dictatorship as a political slave, and who for a time gave up my right to speak freely in order to make money, I can strongly say that the freedom to choose something is a right and is the greatest asset for humans. However, the freedom to choose something is not given. It must be taken by those of us who were not born in freedom. And even any of us living in freedom must avoid giving up our freedom. Thank you.